Welcome to the It's Been Said podcast. I'm your host, SAI Executive Director Lisa Ramey. Today we're talking about the power of professional connection and why membership in both your state association and national organization can play such an important role in supporting school leaders. Across the country, organizations like NAESP, NASSP, and AASA work to support principals and superintendents through professional learning, advocacy, and networking with colleagues facing similar challenges. Today, I'm joined by Iowa leaders who represent each of these national organizations to talk about their experiences, the benefits of membership, and why being connected at both the state and national level matters for administrators and ultimately for students and the communities you serve. So welcome to Brent Jorth, Superintendent of Central Lyon Community School District and our AASA representative. Also to Cindy Barwick, Middle School Principal at Sheldon Community School District and our NASSP representative. And Dana Nally, our Elementary Principal at Bedford Community School District and NAESP representative. So once again, thank you. Welcome to all three of you. Really appreciate your time today. Let's start by having each of you share briefly your role and how you first became involved with your national organization. So Brent, we'll start with you.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to kind of talk about AASA. When I became a superintendent 7 years ago, SAI made it really easy for me to just check the box when I did my renewal of my membership. Before that, I was a member of NASSP as a high school principal in a previous life, and so just kind of continued membership from that organization once I made the transition to the superintendency.
Awesome. How about Cindy?
I kind of became first involved with NASSP, I guess, when I was on exec council with SAI. I became just more aware of the function and the prevalence of NASSP. When my term ended with exec council, I didn't feel like my time had ended yet with wanting to serve SAI, so I did some inquiry and checked in, and we were looking for an NASSP rep. I think someone had retired, and so that spot was open. And so I was able really to just transition from exec into the NASSP role. And it really, they were kind of connected to begin with, and now this has kind of become its own separate thing from exec council.
And Dana, I think you've just are completing your first year in the NAESP.
Yeah. Well, I'm completing my first year as the state rep in NAESP. I joined the national organization in 2007 when I became an administrator in Iowa. And I joined that because my superintendent said, hey, I think being part of the state association and the national association are really great things. And SAI made it very easy for me to just mark both of those things. And so that is initially why I became a part of the national organization. I became that state rep by inquiring and looking to, I think, serve my profession even more than I could at the local level.
Yeah, awesome. And I really do appreciate, I don't think our listeners understand that each of you are giving of your time, which is very limited, right? When you're leaders in a district or building, you're very busy people. And so giving of your little bit of time that there is to give to serve at not only the state level, but then at the national level and representing Iowa at each of your respective organizations. So thank you for that. So many administrators we know belong to our state organization, and then we have some, a good number, but not all, join the national organization. So from your perspectives, why is it important to be connected at both levels? Cindy, do you want to start?
Sure. I think being able to be connected at both the state and the national level allows you to see things from a different perspective. I think there are some resources. SAI provides a lot of services for us, but there are some services that maybe a national organization provides that our state organization does not. And then just having the power in numbers. To me, it's always been reassuring that when I'm talking with one of my colleagues from Rhode Island or Minneapolis or Alaska, that they experience some of the same issues and problems and concerns and work-throughs that I do. And that's, I don't know, maybe misery loves company, but just having that, okay, this is not just me. I can reach out to my colleagues and peers and get some ideas for some solutions that we maybe have not thought about. So just a little broader perspective on looking at issues.
Dana, what would you add to that?
I really think that being a member at both the state and the national levels offer unique, but also complement each other very well. At that state level, I feel like there's connections that are immediate, maybe relevant to our day to day, to things happening within our state specifically. We work alongside colleagues who understand those same state policies and state implications. So that's very important. But we also, at the national level, then I think our perspective broadens a little bit. We're able to learn from educators across the country and bring maybe innovative ideas and best practices. And while, yes, some of us have the similar concerns at the state and national level, it's just a bigger scope, I think. So I think that both levels also play a very important role in advocacy, whether you are at the state level or the national level. And I think that state organizations help us to voice to our legislation and decisions that maybe directly impact our schools in our state. But national organizations then just give us that voice at a larger level, I think.
Brent, from the superintendent's level, what would you add?
I would really echo what Dana and Cindy have shared. I think the professional networking that comes through AASA is much like the elementary principals and the secondary principals organizations. And so that networking opportunity, and then similarly, the advocacy component, AASA puts a tremendous summer conference on, and they invite administrators to Washington, D.C., and they take us through very similar types of things that Dave Doughton provides for us at the state level, they provide at the federal level. And because we're all there together, we have access to our representatives and senators. We get to kind of share how federal legislation is going to impact us at the local level, and try to provide some perspective and some insight on the legislation that's being debated. And a lot of times it comes down to funding and how changes in the funding mechanisms can impact us at the state level.
Yeah, I think one of the threads that all of you talked about, well, two threads, the networking piece, the importance of that at the national level, as well as the advocacy piece. Because I don't know that people always realize how much that federal advocacy, what's happening at the federal level can really have an impact on you in the local, here, us in Iowa. So it's important to have that voice at that national level. So when you think about your respective national organizations, what are some of the most valuable benefits you've either personally experienced from being a member, or you've heard others, maybe your colleagues, talk about? Dana, let's start with you.
One of the most meaningful benefits for me has been the opportunity to grow personally and professionally through the different connections and the experiences that the national organization has provided. I was able to be recognized as a National Distinguished Principal in 2023, which was truly a highlight of my career. Not only did it honor the work I did, but it also honored my school and the commitment that my teachers and community and students have. Plus, I got to network with incredible principals across the state that I still talk with. And so I think it was, being in a room with other leaders who are committed to their students deeply, it was humbling and it was energizing. It reminded me that we're all part of something much larger than just our own buildings and our own states, for that matter. So the professional growth, I think, through national conferences would also be a huge key for me, as far as the things that I've been able to share, the things I've learned, the things I've brought back to my building. I think some of the times I've been able to go, it kind of challenges me and makes me think, okay, how can I implement that? How can I make those things better back in rural Iowa and things like that? So it has allowed me, I think, to grow professionally, because I'm making connections and network and hearing from principals, big schools, little schools, different parts of the country, just have a variety of experiences, yet we're all focused on the same thing. At the end of the day, all of us want to do what's best for our students.
Brent, how about you?
I've got a really simple thing that I love about AASA, and that's the monthly school administrator magazine. The fact that shows up each month, I read it cover to cover. Growing up, it was Sports Illustrated. Now, as a school superintendent, it's that school administrator magazine I look forward to each month. And it can be the simple everyday reminders that you get out of that. or it
Mhm.
can be the in-depth profiles on a district that's done something innovative that's kind of challenging what we're doing here locally. But I just really love that magazine.
And Cindy, how about for
Uh,
NASSP?
Yeah, I would say for me, as I have been in this for a while, and so I have always just challenged myself to stay like I don't want to ever be at that point where people are saying, "Oh my goodness, is she about done? She's out of gas, or she's out of ideas, or whatever the case may be." So being involved with an organization like NASSP just allows me to just stay connected and stay hopefully at the forefront of things rather than being reactive, being proactive to things, but just kind of keeping my own personal bucket filled so that I can, in this profession that takes a lot out of you, being able to put something in that bucket so that you are able to serve others. So that's kind of been where I have come from and wanted to stay involved in things, is that I just selfishly, I want to keep my own bucket filled so that I have something to give to others. And NASSP allows me to kind of keep my bucket filled.
Some of you have probably talked a little bit about this already, but if there's anything else that kind of comes to mind, but when you think about membership in your national organization, how does it help you stay informed then about the emerging trends? You kind of talked around that some, policy changes, or even challenges that are facing school leaders across the country. Because sometimes what I found is when I hear something's happening in one state, it might end up here. So, Brent,
Yeah.
let's start with you.
Yeah, I think the National Legislative Advocacy Conference really opened my eyes to that. And we're talking the last couple of years, we've talked a lot about property tax reform. And so at that conference, I sat next to a superintendent from North Dakota, and they were going through that and had been through it and on the other side. And so kind of borrowing some of their talking points, some of the arguments about the impact to schools they had already experienced, and they were living it. And so bringing those back and sharing those not only with the people in the superintendency across Iowa, but sharing that with Dave. So Dave can take that message, Dave Doughton can take that message to other places and have those similar types of conversations, opening the doors so that people can call and just have a conversation about those trends that are happening in other places. Like you said, very rarely do things just start here in Iowa. We're always looking at other places and borrowing the ideas that others have.
Cindy, what would you like to add to that?
And I guess I would kind of go back to what Brent said. The question before was using those publications. I think that's a great way to stay that membership kind of keeps us in the loop on things. NASSP is excellent. Their email communication it is frequent and but helpful. And whether it be an email, information that comes via email or an information about a webinar that they're going to offer or something along those lines. But I think just taking advantage of the resources that they provide to you, whether it be in print or electronic or virtual, and just taking advantage of those things has really helped me to be able to stay informed on what's happening at the national level, because we know it is going to impact us at some point as well. So taking advantage of all of those resources.
Dana, how about NAESP? How does that help?
I agree with Cindy. NAESP has multiple resources in digital or print. We have a monthly newsletter that we send out, Lead the Way, that I send out then to all Iowa administrators, elementary administrators. They provide things like the Principal Magazine, Beyond the Bell. But I think what's good about the resources that I utilize myself is that they don't just inform me. They're not. Some of them are great. Sometimes I look at them and I just get great ideas, but they help me reflect as a principal. They help me maybe adapt a little bit as a principal and think about trying to be more proactive instead of reactive in some things. And, they do help us, I think, anticipate, maybe get some ideas of knowing that, okay, if this is happening here, it probably is going to be coming here. But again, that gives us a proactive mindset, I think, instead of a reactive mindset.
Again, you each talked a little bit about your own learning and growing by being a part of a national organization. So, in what ways do you find that you've either grown as a leader or how being a part of that national organization has influenced your work at the local level? I don't know, Dana, would you like to start us?
Yeah, I think that my national membership has really expanded how I see my role as a school leader. So it's helped me to move beyond just focusing on my building or my district and viewing education, I think, through a much broader lens. Like when you're connected to leaders across the country, you start to see patterns and shared challenges and concerns, lots of different innovative ideas that maybe you haven't thought about in our local, context. So I think the broader perspective has influenced maybe how I make some decisions and how I support my staff, how I think about maybe what's best for my students, but not just in my school, but just with education as a whole. I think probably the most impactful piece has been just being able to learn directly from other leaders, hearing about their experiences, strategies. Like when we went to the advocacy conference in Washington, D.C., at first it was like I was nervous because I was the only person from Iowa. And I thought, I don't know, is everybody having issues like do people feel like me? And it didn't take me very long to feel like there was all of us in a room. I wasn't there just in the capacity of an administrator from Iowa. I was there in the capacity of an educator who cares about students and wanting to do what's best for the education system. And I would not have had that opportunity had it not been for NAESP.
Mm-hmm. Brent, what would you add?
I just go back to the network, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the northwest corner of Iowa, proximity wise, I'm probably closer to Laverne, Minnesota than I am any place else. And yet I had to go to the national conference to meet the Laverne, Minnesota superintendent. It just naturally happened that way. He was serving his state, I was serving our state, and yet we never made the time to connect before going to the national conference. And there, you meet as regions and you begin that conversation. And since I did that, you know what? We traded telephone numbers, and I text him now when we're trying to decide what's going on with weather situations and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I just think that network provides a great opportunity, whether they're just across the border or they're across the entire country. It's just another broader network to reach out to kind of help you think and dig a little bit deeper and think about the unintended consequences on decisions that you're making.
Cindy?
Yeah, ditto to both of those answers. And I think just that awareness of that broader perspective, whether it ends up impacting your decision or not, or impacting you directly or not, I think it still impacts you, even if you don't think that there's a direct connection, because your perspective changes. You look at things from just a little bit broader position. And anytime we have the opportunity to do that, then hopefully we're coming up with a better solution or a better answer to whatever problem is in front of us, because we have looked at it maybe from different angles or from a higher position or a higher view, and just are able to make the best decisions possible that we can make.
We're pausing for a brief commercial break. We'll be right back to continue our conversation. Stick around.
Are you ready to support the whole child with smarter assessments? The Pearson Assessment for Learning Suite helps you personalize support for every student, academically, behaviorally, and beyond. Get a holistic view, uncover learning gaps, monitor progress, and identify gifted students. From AIMSweb Plus for academic screening, NNAT3 for gifted identification, and NAVI for personalized instruction, Pearson empowers educators to make data-informed decisions. Accelerate learning and help every child thrive. Visit pearsonassessments.com/learning-suite to learn more.
And now, back to our conversation on leadership.
Sometimes in my role, when I'm talking to counterparts across the nation, there's at times tension between a national organization and the state association. Most often here in Iowa, I see compliments. How do you see, when you think about supporting you all in your roles, school administrators, how does or do you believe that the national organization complements the work of the state association? And if so, what might be an example? Is there anybody that wants to start this one first?
I'll start.
Okay.
I think that they definitely work hand in hand to support school leaders in a comprehensive way. That our state association provides that kind of close to home support. The SAI understands specific context or policies or day-to-day challenges that administrators in Iowa might have, where at the national level, we can kind of broaden that scope and maybe bring in a wider perspective. So when we work with them together, then I think it's a more comprehensive support system. I think probably one of the biggest ways they complement each other, though, and I did not realize this until I became the state rep, was the advocacy piece. Both levels at the state and national level are deeply committed, I think, to advocating for our education in general. State organizations focus on legislation and decisions that are directly impacting us as a state, which are very important, but so are the funding pieces and some of the federal things that when you're talking to your legislators in Washington, D.C., that they need to understand our perspective from what it's like in the Midwest or, a small school versus big school or whatever. They really do need to understand that perspective. So I think that both states have it, or both the state and the national levels have such a strong advocacy piece that I really think they complement each other well and are a true comprehensive support system for education.
From a
Yes.
school safety perspective, AASA has invested heavily in resources and trainings and conferences around school safety planning, from active shooter drills and resources to, your local fire drills and tornado drills and emergency evacuation drills. That complements is maybe a little bit different than SAI, right? So SAI wants to support schools will come alongside us if asked. But when we're talking about 50 states, here's a similar type of set of resources available that anybody can pick and choose from. You can take a team to a conference and really dig in. And so I think AASA is unique when it comes to those district-wide initiatives. And our state organization, SAI, helps us on a day-to-day level when it comes to emergency planning as well.
Yeah, I agree. That's a really good perspective on that, Brent. Cindy, anything to add?
I do. There's good connection between the two. I guess I've not felt any disconnect there. I think each one kind of serves its own purpose, and I think it's compliments to SAI and to Iowa that we get along well with others, and I think this is an example of that. But we kind of have our role at SAI, and we have just a different role at NASSP. But those things really are interconnected, and just having again that national perspective and that broader view really allows that relationship to be complementary.
Yeah. Could each of you share an example of something you learned through your national organization that you were able to bring back and apply either within the state or probably most importantly within your districts or building? Brent, is there anything there at Central
just
Lion?
this year, Central Lion, we put together a AI task force, and that really came out of a year ago's national conference in New Orleans. I attended a session, obviously, been AI curious, so to speak, and dabbled with it myself, but we hadn't put any policies together at a kind of local level. And so when I came back from that, my challenge to my secondary principal was to help lead the district through that process. And he's done a great job. And, we had talked about it, but just never really pulled the trigger. And I felt like this was an opportunity for me to use some of those things that I'd learned at the national conference to help us improve some practices here locally.
Cindy, how about for you?
I think for me, the experience with advocacy work, that's been mentioned a couple of times, but prior to my involvement with NASSP, I certainly had done some advocacy work, but really developed more of a comfort level having had the experiences with NASSP that I have. I sometimes saw that more as a role for the superintendent than the building principal. That perspective has changed as I've just spent more time with NASSP, but just being able to learn exactly how do you advocate and what is effective and what's ineffective and what's best practice and actually doing it, walking up the hill in DC and going into someone's office and sitting face to face and doing having those conversations really has made it more comfortable and more accessible for me to reach out now to our state legislators as well. So, just developing that capacity. And maybe I'm unique in that, but that was just not something that I was comfortable with or even knowledgeable about. Like, I don't even know how to tackle this. How do I, will they read this? Do they want to hear from me? So developing that skill set and that experience to feel comfortable continuing that advocacy work closer to home.
And Dana, how about you?
Yeah, I'm going to piggyback on Cindy a little bit with that because what I had my notes down was that learning a lot more about advocacy as well. I think after I was able to attend the advocacy conference in DC, then I brought back to my building just being more intentional about sharing what's happening in our school, celebrating successes, highlighting needs. And also shared with my staff because I, like Cindy, had thought that's as a building principal, what do I know about advocating? That maybe that wasn't my role per se, but it is our role. It's all of our role to be advocating for our students and for our schools. And so what I kind of brought back was to encourage even within my own building, let's advocate for our students. That doesn't mean you have to call up your legislator necessarily or schedule an appointment. But we need to be, all of us, teachers and everybody needs to be advocating for the schools that we work in and for the students that we work with.
So you guys have mentioned this a little bit, but one of the things we often hear about national organizations is that opportunity to connect with leaders beyond our own state, so beyond Iowa. So let's talk about the role those relationships can play in supporting school leaders. So we know networking is important, both at the state and national level. What have you gained from connecting with administrators from across the country?
First of all, it's given me a much broader perspective. While every school is unique, depending on, where we are, maybe within our state or where we are within the country, many of our challenges that we face are very similar. And so hearing how other leaders approach some of those challenges has helped me maybe problem solve, or if nothing else, it's made me feel not so isolated, because you can go away and be like, okay, that happens there too. And it does kind of, not that we wish for other schools have challenges, but it does comfort us a little bit in knowing that that you're not alone. But just, I think the support and encouragement that comes from the connections that I've been able to make have really helped me be a stronger principal. You can reach out and I have people that I can ask questions of with challenges. I have people that ask me about different things, and it makes me feel like, oh, well, what we're doing in my building is something other people want to know about. And so, those kinds of things, the networking pieces of the good and the bad, successes and challenges, maybe I should rephrase it, have been very valuable.
There's power in numbers, and I feel that power when I'm working with NASSP in particular, just that it's not just my own little corner of Northwest Iowa. It is a bigger picture, and it is a national picture, national concerns and national issues. And just knowing that you have the power of an organization behind you, you have a power of colleagues behind you, you have like-minded people with similar experiences behind you. And it's reassuring. Our jobs can be scary some days, and our jobs can be lonely some days. And just having that sense of power and comfort in those numbers behind you has meant a lot to me.
Brent, do you have anything you'd add?
I don't have anything to add. I think these two ladies have hit it on the head.
All right, awesome. So you guys kind of talked about really even the next question that I was thinking with the isolated, if someone feels isolated in their role, how can the national membership help with that? Is there anything that you would think of differently than your previous responses around that? And Brent, if so.
Yeah, I can take this one. Yeah. I think, sometimes when we have conference superintendents meetings, we have AEA regional meetings monthly, I think there's maybe some comfort in allowing yourself to be vulnerable with a national organization, your national network, because they aren't in your backyard, right? And something that might be challenging to bring up that you're facing at the local level, you have that comfort of anonymity when it's somebody that you're not necessarily going to see at the next meeting that you go to. And so, it might be challenges that you have coaching a certain staff member, or for me, it might be dealing with the budget and how I'm going to communicate that, knowing that I might have to raise property taxes on a certain segment of our population. So, allowing yourself to be vulnerable with those people that have similar challenges oftentimes comes back and they reach out to you the next time they have a challenging conversation, because you were vulnerable with them, they're going to be vulnerable with you.
Cindy or Dana, anything to add?
Something that came to mind when thinking about this question was a service that NASSP offers. They have a networking group. There are different networks within the organization. So for example, I belong to a middle school principals group and a women in leadership group, which certainly there's lots of middle school principals in the world and lots of women in education and in administration. But maybe, but not necessarily just here within my, within the four walls that I'm working in. So just to be able to connect with people who, are in similar roles or similar situations, that's been helpful for me, and just again reassuring and empowering, and it's just a real benefit of membership for sure.
And I think that another benefit of national membership that we maybe don't think of very often, but they do have, there's a strong layer of support through various resources that your national membership can provide. So, access and guidance to legal benefits, for example, knowing that you have credible and reliable resources to lean on, especially if something very challenging is happening. I just think it helps provide some security for you in in a profession that can be pretty insecure at times. So I do think the national level really has a good system of support to help navigate those difficult moments if we need them.
Yeah, no, that's really good to highlight that, Dana. Appreciate that. What opportunities are there for other types of leadership roles at the national organizations? So you each, for example, not only are you leaders in your own districts, but at the state level, you're leaders because you sit on our representative council. You represent the national organizations, not only for us, but for Iowa there. So you're kind of that conduit between the two. What are some other leadership opportunities at the national level in your respective organizations?
I can go first here on this one too. Like I've mentioned before, the national organization is separated into different regions. So within our own region, we have members that then represent us to the national organization on the national executive board. And so within our region, we've got leadership amongst I think it's about 30 different superintendents from across our region. And so being an Iowa representative to the governing board, you can put your name forward and serve the region, or you can put your name forward and try to earn a nationwide seat on the national executive board. So it's really an empowering opportunity to be elected by your state, but then it doesn't have to stop there if you want to continue to serve regionally and nationally.
NAESP is like that as well. As far as we call them zones. So we are in Zone 6, so it's Iowa, Wisconsin, and Michigan, and you can be a zone leader. Right now, Wisconsin is in charge of our zone, but it's my understanding that Iowa is next. So here in a few years, we will, have that potentially that. And then again, you said on the national board, and you can work your way up through that if you would want to, go that route. So there's lots of opportunities for even more leadership at a national level if a member would want to do that.
I think there's also some professional development opportunities, lots of, I just think about the national conferences and just the caliber of speakers when you get to attend a national conference is just a lot of times just really impressive and so educational. So that's another opportunity I think that comes with being involved with any of these organizations, that participating in that really high quality professional development and training opportunities.
So looking ahead, why do you believe strong membership in national organizations is important for the future of educational leadership and really the profession as a whole?
Well, I believe that at the national level, I think that they can help us because the challenges that we are facing in education as a nation, are just become bigger and bigger. And we need that support from the state and the federal levels in order to help us come up with a plan of action to help address some of those concerns. I think that we have stronger influence and we have a louder voice if we, work together. And in many ways, I think a national organization kind of helps build a sense of unity across our profession. Like we learn from one another, we support one another, we support future leaders. I know that's been an option through NASP. We've been able to have kind of aspiring principals be a part of some things and help them. So I do think that it also has a strong component in sustaining and hopefully retaining some really high quality administrators.
I would echo that, and just that, public education, both in our state and at the national level, certainly is facing some challenges, and it will just continue to be important for us to stay connected to each other and sticking together as we kind of push through these challenges and rise to the occasion and meet the challenges just head on. And having that power in numbers and that reassurance in numbers, it's not an issue that is just related to Iowa alone. We know across the country there are certainly decisions being made that are impacting everyone in public education. So as much as we can stick together as public educators, I think there's just true value in that, and we're just stronger together.
Nothing to add.
All right. So as we come close to wrapping up here, if you could encourage every administrator in your role, so whether it's elementary, secondary, or superintendents, to take advantage of the national organization, or at least one opportunity at your national organization, what would it be and why?
I'm going to start where I did at the top. I think that attending the National Advocacy Conference in DC was the best learning experience I've had in my time on the governing board. It brings together the nationwide foremost leaders when it comes to advocacy. It's the cutting edge of what's really happening at the federal level, but then it also translates when it comes to the talking points back home. And whether that's talking to your local representative or your local school board, it doesn't matter. Those messages carry at the federal, state, and local level.
Yeah, thank you, Brent.
I'm going to pick something smaller, but that has been really impactful and helpful for me. NASSP sends out advocacy alerts. So when something is going on, there's a vote coming, or there's legislation that's being discussed, they may send out a notification that here's what's happening. Get a hold of your legislators. And I think if you're just getting started with advocacy work, or you're not sure what to do with advocacy work, that's a great way to get started, because they're kind of telling you exactly this is what's going on, and here's what you can say, and here's who you should contact. It's very clear. So just taking advantage of that resource that's available to you as part of your membership and then utilizing it is a great first step, and will just allow you to develop some comfort and skills and really allow you that path to get your voice heard. So something simple like an advocacy alert.
And I'm going to go a different little path than advocacy, but if I were going to encourage elementary principals, I would encourage them to take advantage of the National Principals Conference if they are able to. To me, it was truly just unmatched. It was one of the best professional learning opportunities I have been a part of. And not only were the sessions high quality and relevant, and I could bring back lots of things, I just felt inspired. In mid-July, you're kind of questioning what's happening as far as an administrator. And so it was perfect timing for me. I felt when I got back and while I was there, it was just very energizing. We all know leadership can be demanding, and attending that conference, I guess, helped me step away, recharge and reconnect, and really be my why, why am I doing what I'm doing? And then when I went there and I was able to network with all these other wonderful administrators and get great ideas and just felt energized. And I came back to Iowa and I'm like, I know my why. I know my why. I know my purpose here. And I just had not necessarily felt that way coming from some professional learning in the past. So.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, I truly want to thank the three of you, Brent, Dana, Cindy, thanks for taking your time. I, again, really know how busy each one of you are. And so to carve out an hour, 45 minutes to chat about the importance of involvement at the national organization I'm grateful. So thank you for that. Thanks for sharing your perspectives and your experiences with our listeners today. And professional organizations like NAESP, NASSP, and AASA play an important role in supporting school leaders through advocacy, as we've heard a lot, professional learning, and connections with colleagues across our country. So for our administrators listening, staying connected to both your state association and national organization can provide valuable support as you navigate the opportunities and challenges of educational leadership. Thanks for joining us for this conversation, and we look forward to continuing to highlight the work of leaders who are making a difference for students, staff, and your communities every day. So thank you once again.